This is I Never Knew That About Britain. Susanna, Steve and me, Paul Martin, are scouring Great Britain for extraordinary stories. Tonight we're looking at iconic designs that have shaped our nation. Steve's off to discover the origins of the towering giants that make our cities what they are today.
New York, Dubai, Hong Kong, Ditherington. Yes, Ditherington and their flax mill. In fact, none of the other cities would be half as impressive if it wasn't for a few little flax seeds and a man that changed the world. How did these tiny seeds and a mill in Shrewsbury help cities around the world become towering metropolises? Like here in London. Well, I'm off to Ditherington in Shropshire, where it all began. It's hard to imagine that Ditherington has anything at all to do with the world's megacities and their towering buildings, but unbelievably, it's where the skyscrapers started. In the later part of the 18th century, Ditherington was a hive of industrial activity. It was like the Silicon Valley of its time. In 1796, some rich industrial geniuses, the Benyon brothers and John Marshall, wanted to build a state-of-the-art flax mill. Flaxseed, or linseed, was all the rage then. It could make you a fortune, because once it's milled, it can be used to make everything from rope to banknotes. And the entrepreneurs had the equivalent of a whopping £1 million to invest in the stuff. But there's a problem with flaxseed, which is fire. When you mill something, it can create a fine powder. Let me show you what happens when that fine powder mixes with oxygen and meets a naked flame. That was big. So with a fireball like that, a timber frame building wouldn't stand a chance. It would burn to the ground. Mills at the time were made of wood and lit by candles, so the combination of flammable milled seed, candlelight and wooden buildings was explosive, and people were dying in catastrophic fires. Of course, the Benyon brothers didn't want their vast investment to go up in smoke either, so they needed a cunning plan. They employed a pioneering engineer called Charles Babbage, who created this now derelict mill. It might not look like much, but what they created was something completely revolutionary.
Through in here and we'll see the building that changed the world.
Okay. Babbage built the mill using a thin iron frame, and he was the first person in the world to do so. This brand spanking new technique not only stopped the building from burning down, it transformed dark and dingy rooms into huge open workspaces. Oh, great. It's an impressive building, isn't it?
It's amazing.
I wasn't expecting so many pillars.
This is such a daring building. You see, because Babbage was a scientist, because Babbage had done his sums, he knew you could get away with iron that thin.
So once you've got this iron structure, you can just keep building up and up.
That's right. The sky's the limit. You just make it a little bit stronger and you can carry on up really until the money runs out. This unlocked the whole problem of how to build high. This is a Grade 1 listed historic building, same as St. Paul's Cathedral.
It was the birth of the skyscraper. So this is the granddad of skyscrapers, I guess.
Yes, this is the ancestor of the skyscraper. This is what makes them all possible. This is very, very special stuff.
Wow. It might not look like much of a skyscraper to you or me. It's about 100 stories too short for that. But in 1797, when it was built, that's about as high as you could go. The reason being, they hadn't invented lifts yet. The first passenger lift wasn't up and running until 1857, almost 70 years after the Ditherington mill was built. And until then, Charles Babbage's design went relatively unnoticed. In fact, it wasn't until a devastating fire ripped through the heart of Chicago in 1871 that engineering really started to change. The fire burned almost 4 square miles of the city down to the ground, but it was this catastrophic loss that took Charles Bage's design to new heights. Engineer John Bushell is building London's latest skyscraper. So how did a fire in Chicago put Ditherington Mill on the map? So there's this enormous fire in Chicago. What happens next?
Well, it's a huge, vibrant city, feeding the whole of the southwest, and they needed a quick answer. But they also needed to grasp the moment to build more intensely and densely in their city. So they scoured the world for new inventions, new thoughts in how to build tall and quickly, and they came across Charles Badge's building in the north of England. The first skyscraper they built was 10 stories high, 138 feet, big iron frame.
So those original skyscrapers were only 10 stories tall, much higher, and the building would just fall over. Strong central cores in the buildings allowed us to go even higher. So not only could they house the lift shaft, but they would also stop the buildings toppling over. How much do we have to thank Charles Badge for that?
He was way ahead of his time when he did a frame building, and essentially that idea, the frame, is the thing that we still use.
So the birth of the skyscraper belongs to Great Britain?
Yes, I mean, Charles Badge was ahead of his time. Yeah. He had the idea. Obviously, lots of other things happened after that in terms of extruding it, but he is the person who had the first idea.
Even around this modern tower, you can see some of Charles Bage's concept. Frameworks of steel encased in concrete, which allow for big open spaces, all held together by this same revolutionary idea, Charles Bage's frame. Cityscapes around the world have changed forever, and it's all because of an engineer from Shrewsbury and his inflammable flax mill in Ditherington, the true mother of all skyscrapers.